The next speaker, it's a great pleasure to introduce, is, excuse me, Humberto Maturana. He began his career in biology as a student of medicine in Chile, obtained his PhD at Harvard, and began a series of experiments in vision, which eventually led to the development of the biology of cognition. He's perhaps best known for the notion of autopoiesis. I'm sure everybody is familiar with that term and his work in this. He is currently teaching at the Metropolitan University in Chile. And of course, he's the recipient of many honors and has published many books and papers. It's with great pleasure that I introduce Professor Maturana.
Thank you very much. I am happy to be here. I have been invited by the Society of Cybernetics, the American Society of Cybernetics, by two ladies, Dr. Bunnell, the president, and Dr. Forsyth, the vice president of the society. In addition, I participated some years ago in the celebration of the Year of the Women in Puerto Alegre in Brazil. And I had the honor of being made honorary woman. So, here I am. I have not received so many honors, in fact. There are two honors that I have received that I wish to mention. My concern here is understanding, not description, and I wish to make some reflections for understanding, in fact, us. But of course, as we have seen between yesterday and today, we are part of the cosmos, and us is not independent of the flow of cosmic existence. We are part of it. Well, the two honors I wish to mention is one which I received when I was a very young person. I had returned to Chile after being doctorate in the United States, in Harvard. This was 1964. We were in the process of creating a Faculty of Sciences in the University of Chile in Santiago, and some people had to be elected to have a look into the curricula of all those that were candidates to be the founding professors, and they had to elect two in which everybody would have confidence, and I was one of them. And I think this is a very great honor, because it pertains to exactly the central question of our life. Trust. Do we trust or not? Here we are in trust, but trust is a very fundamental, it's the very essence of the fabric of human coexistence of society. And this is our problem now, the continuous loss of trust. We do not trust the world in which we live. We want to control it. Control means lack of trust. The other honor which I received was the Chilean National Science Prize in 1994, which I think is a great honor because it's supported by all the taxpayers in Chile that make this prize possible. So I was very grateful to all my Chilean fellows. But that is another element which is significant for what we are considering here in general terms, participation. We are interdependent in various ways, and that may seem a trivial one, but it's a very fundamental one. Whenever we pay our taxes, we contribute to the flow of energy of the realization of the country to which we belong. I consider money energy, and our problems arise when we begin to hoard this energy and we stop its flow, whichever way we do this. Now, I shall do something very simple. I want to reflect upon what are the conditions under which one can understand a very peculiar situation. We exist in the present. Well, we have been hearing about time, and of course, I'm not denying time, but we exist in the present. Yesterday is not now. Tomorrow is not now. We exist in a continuously changing present, like a wavefront. A wavefront is very interesting. It's a continuously changing present. We can pick several points on it and compute its origin, but the wavefront is a continuously changing present, or not? If we compute the center of origin, well, it's not now. It's an explanation of our now. If we make an extrapolation about some future event, it's not now. It's a computation of what might happen if the now goes on being as now is. So how can understanding take place if we exist in the present? True, we generate these explanatory principles. Time, for example, is an explanatory principle. We can claim that it's a physical dimension, but it's of a very different kind than other physical dimensions. We exist in the present as an unfolding, not unfolding because it's not folded, as a changing present, in which everything is arising spontaneously. Everything is a consequence of a process, is not an attainment. We are not an attainment. I have not attained any particular state. I am in the flow of transformation in which I am now, as I am now, and do what I do according to how I am now. In addition, in this process of explaining, which we do as we interact with each other in language, in being a continuous present, we describe ourselves, our components. As we just saw, we can zoom in and see even our atomic elements or molecules. But we exist in our explaining as an entity now, as a living system now, existing in a medium now, in interactions with it. If we look inside, we are observers. If we look inside, we see processes, components. If we look outside, we see behavior. I would put here physiology, behavior. And if we look at the totality of this interaction, we shall see our individuality. We shall see how are we in the circumstances that we live. And this is a continuously changing present. And through operating like this, because we are one of these entities, a living system, we can say that as living systems, we are molecular entities. And all that applies to molecules applies to us. But at the same time, we are a totality. And as we just heard, as we operate as a totality, what happens in the components is obscured. We don't see our molecules. Yet we are realized through our molecules. So whatever is of molecules applies to us. But what is of molecules? That which we describe. And how do we describe it? By our doings. So I think that the real problem that we have in understanding, because understanding is not the same as description. I think that indeed our task as scientists is understanding. We can understand how a living system operates in its being without necessarily being able to describe all the details of its realization. When I say this famous word autopoiesis, I'm referring to the constitution of the living system as a singular entity. We are singular entities. Everything that happens to us or in relation to us happens through our living as singular entities. If we are members of a society, we are members of a society being singular entities. If we are members of a group that has a particular identity as a group, we realize our participation in that group as singular entities, in the realization of our singularity. All biological phenomena occur through the realization of these singular entities that are living systems. And these singular entities are a continuous changing process, a continuous changing present, but have the singularity of having a border which is part of its realization as a singular entity. And we are molecular beings, and hence, as molecular beings, everything that happens to us happens in the realization of our molecularity. And I will refer to that as structural determinism. We operate at every instant according to how we are in our structure at that instant. But at the same time, we exist in a relational space, in a medium which is, as we encounter it, our niche. And it's there where behavior takes place. Our medium or the niche is not part of us, but we are realizing it. So it is the realization of this dynamic which constitutes us as individuals, and as we are transformed in the flow of our living, our niche is being transformed as well. As I walk around, 10 minutes, fantastic, I have enough. And as I walk around, the place where I stand goes with me. Living system and niche change together. We and our circumstance go together, changing congruently. I'm going to make another drawing and then propose to you some systemic laws which I think are the background, are the ground on which everything happens in relation to us human beings, even our understanding. Let this be a living system. System and circumstance change together. I shall put time here to refer to different moments of the flow. And these flows will go on until the living system dies. But what I want to emphasize is that system and circumstance change together. Now this is very interesting. This is why we're never out of place. And when we're out of place with die. I sometimes tell the story of my uncle. I have a very rich uncle that was very ill, has a pacemaker, has to have artificial respiration, has to be put in the artificial kidney, and so on and so forth. So I went one day to the judge to say, please, I want to ask for the inheritance. My uncle is about to die. I mean, he is in the hospital. He cannot go anywhere. So I am the only inheritor. And the judge said, do you have the death certificate? And I said, no. Then you cannot claim the inheritance. So a living system is alive as long as it is alive. We may think that it is in a poor state, but my uncle, I mean, is in perfect congruence with his circumstance. If you take it out from there, it dies. It stays there, it stays alive. And arrive there, living. I mean, yeah. The other drawing here, and with this I end, is this changing together in the mere flow of coexistence. So it doesn't matter what the circumstance is, living system and circumstance change together congruently. And in fact, this is valid for any system. But systems exist in a different domain than their components. They are totalities. If this is a living system, here in the relation with the circumstance is the organism. And a living system exists as long as living is conserved and congruence with the circumstance is conserved. Adaptation is not a variable in living system. It's a constant relation. And the living system lives as long as that constant relation is conserved. Could you please project this? I'm going to present you, yes, three systemic laws. Now, I don't pretend that you do not know this. Now, how do we do this for this to appear here? Okay, let us put the first one visible, please. Could you? Now, these systemic laws are abstractions of our living, of our distinctions. The first one says, whenever in a collection of elements some relations begin to be conserved, a space is open for all else to change around the relations conserved. This is how systems arise, spontaneously. Two persons become friends, and then you have a couple, as long as the movement of them together in relation to one another is conserved. A system indeed, and this is how I understand it, is any collection of elements interconnected in such a way that if you act on one, you act on all of them. But this arises spontaneously. And this is the way anything arises in the cosmos, I claim. So that is a cosmic systemic law, which is an abstraction of the coherences of our living. We abstract this from what we do and how we live together and how we experience. All of these presentations that we have heard are abstractions of our doings. Even when we look at a distant star, what we talk about is what happens to us. And then we can talk about the nervous system and all that, and how we infer or say something about the medium, but we're always talking about what happens to us and making abstractions of what happens to us. The second law, which I have there, is more of the biological domain. The course followed by the history of living systems in general and by the human history in particular is determined by emotions, preferences, desires, but not by resources as if these were a value in themselves. Something is a resource if you like it, if you want it. Something is an opportunity if you want it. It's not by itself. It is well-being that guides evolution, not success. Evolution as a biological phenomenon is not the survival of the fittest, it is survival of the fit in this continuously changing present. And the third systemic law says the outcome of a process is not a factor in its origin. We sometimes confuse the result with the cause for its occurrence. It is a little bit like the Aristotelic final cause. This is not the case. Nothing has happened in order that something else should happen. But as something begins to be conserved, the whole world changes around what is being conserved. And what is being conserved has to do with pleasure. The world has changed around the conservation of the enjoyment of computing, computations, computers. And now the whole world is different because it has changed around the conservation of our play and enjoyment of computers. I think, and I propose this to you to consider, these are systemic conditions. One which I would say is cosmic. This is in the background of this matter of complexity and the obscuring of details when you change domains of complexity, for example, if you begin to consider the organism as a totality. The course of history, in the case of living system, has to do with emotions. But in the case of the cosmos, has to do with whatever asymmetry results in that some configuration of relations begins to be conserved. And this is a reminder to us, I am finishing, to realize that whenever we argue that something is there because it was necessary, it is not the case, not even when we say that we are doing something because we want the outcome. We are operating in a changing present. Thank you very much.